Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff Hahn, and I'm facilitating the afternoon webinar series for Corwin. Welcome to the Learning Challenge, How to Make the Most of the Learning Pit with James Nottingham. I want to thank you all for joining us today. Now I'd like to turn the meeting over to Anna Messick, Marketing Manager for Corwin.
Thank you, Jeff. Welcome to Corwin's Monday afternoon webinar series. Today, it's my very great pleasure to introduce James Nottingham. James is the founder of Challenging Learning, a company based in the UK, Australia, and Scandinavia. He has been described by the Swedish Teaching Union as one of the most talked about names in the world of school development. In 2009, James was listed among the Future 500, a definitive list of the UK's most forward-thinking and brightest innovators. Next slide, please. All right, today James will be talking about the Learning Challenge, which is the topic of his new series of books with Corwin. As a special thank you for attending today's webinar, we are offering a 20% discount on the Challenging Learning series when you order using the discount code on the screen. And now I'll hand it over to you, James.
Thank you very much, Anna. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Thank you, Anna, Ariel, and Jeff for setting this up, and thank you, everybody, for joining me. This webinar, I aim to give an overview of the Learning Challenge, to give a rationale behind it. I'll then get into how it works, ways to get into the pit, ways to get out of the pit. I'll briefly mention the mindset behind it, and then give some final thoughts. I'll be delighted to answer any questions that you might fire our way. The Learning Challenge looks like this. That was what it looked like originally. I'll come to the developments as we go on from there. The start of the Learning Challenge begins with one idea, a basic idea. When your students have got some surface level, some basic idea of a topic, a concept, something that you are investigating with them. The Learning Challenge then takes them through into the pit, and that is about identifying lots of different ideas around that concept, around that topic that you're studying with them. By searching in the pit, you are thinking about what these ideas mean, how they connect to each other, how they contradict each other, how they conflict with each other. And eventually, that then leads to a sense of clarity, because your students begin to understand the connections between all of these ideas. And then the Learning Challenge finishes with a sense of how can we use this information, how can we use these ideas, this newfound understanding in a new context. At the heart of the Learning Challenge is the pit. The pit is a metaphor to describe when somebody is feeling uneasy, feeling conflicted in their mind, feeling as if they've got a lot of things going on that they're trying to wrestle with, they're trying to understand more deeply. The background to the Learning Challenge: when I was teaching in Northumberland, that's the top northeast corner of England, right on the Scottish border, working in a school there, I was using philosophy for children a lot with my students. And I developed a process to help them think through ideas and concepts more deeply. And that process was a 4-step plan. We started with a concept. We then looked at how to challenge each other's ideas around that concept, and I'll give you some examples as we go through this webinar. By unearthing those challenges and those conflicts in people's ideas, in people's mind, that then helped everybody to clarify what is meant, and also, of course, what is not meant by those concepts. And together then we would construct meaning, a new meaning, a real meaning for the whole group, a meaning that meant something personal, meant something social, meant something more deeply than the knowledge that might have just come from a book or might have come from another person. By constructing that meaning, then our students, my students, we were together in a better position to be able to take that forward and consider our next steps. This was during the 90s. And then in 2003, I heard John Edwards, an Australian guy, talking about the pit and how organizations often go through a pit when they start something new. They get worse before they get better. And that spoke to me. I thought, a pit, that's a great metaphor. That would work beautifully with this model that I've been developing. And so the Learning Challenge was born. You can find out more about the history of it at that URL that you see on the screen. And also I've put the web address for that video that you can see a screenshot of. That was actually filmed by the BBC back in 1999 with the students I was working with at the time, doing some philosophy for children using this process. A lot of people will refer to the Learning Challenge as the Learning Pit. One and the same thing. We're going to be looking at it here and now. When you do a search online for the Learning Pit, you'll get millions, literally millions of hits. That's gratifying. It's strange to think it started in a classroom many, many years ago, and now look how popular it is. I was in a school in London a few months ago, and it was a delight to visit the school. They've been using the Learning Challenge for a number of years. And as I was walking along the corridor, this is what I came across. And there was this boy sat in a pit. I said to him, "What are you up to then?" He says, "I'm in the pit." I said, "Oh yeah, what does that mean?" And he said, "That means I'm confused and I'm trying to work out a problem that I've got." "Okay," said I, "that sounds really interesting. So when you sit in the pit, what does that tell other people?" And he gave a great response, and that was, he said, "It means leave me to work it out. I'll get there myself." And I thought that was brilliant. It was the very opposite to what so many young people have got themselves into the habit of, and that is asking for help immediately. As soon as they're stuck, "Please, can you help me, teacher?" Whereas this approach is, you know what, I'm in the pit, and that's okay, because I'm thinking it through. I've got a lot of tools and strategies to think it through, and I'm going to create a new meaning, a new idea from this. If some people would like to join me in the pit and think about it with me, then that would be so much the better. But don't come and rescue me. This is not about becoming dependent on someone to rescue me. It is about thinking together and really getting into it deeply. If you were to look online, there are lots and lots and lots of examples. Take a look at this post here from Teaching Resources and look how many times it was shared, more than 4,000 times. Lovely that that post was shared so many times. It's just a shame that the image is one actually that I don't like. Two reasons. One, the main reason is if you look at it, it starts and finishes at the same level. To me, it makes me wonder, what's the point? Why would you go through all of that hard work to end up at the same point? So I encourage you, if you're going to draw the Learning Challenge with your students, then please encourage them to draw the right hand, the exit, higher than the entry point on the left-hand side. And also, I do wonder what the brick wall is doing at the bottom of the pit. It seems to me that if you were on top of that wall, then you'd be less in the pit, which I guess is not the impression that that artist was trying to give. But nonetheless, it's lovely that this has been shared. Because of these so many examples out there, my team and I, we've been creating some other illustrations, some more accurate ones, and these are available online now. They're also available in this new book coming out with Corwin. In fact, it's already published in the US, It's coming to other parts of the world very, very soon. Within that book, there are lots of examples. This image that you see on the left-hand side of your screen is but one of the examples in that book. If you compare that image to the original picture, the original diagram of the pit, you can see the similarity. You can also see how it helps to have illustrators on your team. The one on the right was me drawing it in the classroom. On the one on the left is when you've got the benefit of skillful illustrators to help. So that's a very brief overview of the learning challenge. What's the rationale behind it? This is a video. Don't worry that there's no sound. I purposely made sure there's no sound on it. This is my son, the middle of 3 children, and this is his maiden voyage on a bicycle. This is not our garden, I hasten to add. This is on a farm that we were staying for a holiday, and there he goes. And what you can see as he's cycling and as children ride bikes for the first time, there's a whole lot of wobble. And I just love that word, wobble. It's quite a visceral word. It's that sense of we are wobbling, we're out of our comfort zone, we're not quite in control, and that is what the pit is about. That's what the learning challenge is about. It's the same if you think of your journey from home to work, and those of us who drive from home to work. We jump in the car and away we go. It's easy. We're in our comfort zone. We're not really having to think about it. But try driving in India, for example. Just how much more of a challenge is that? There are so many different things on the road. For many of you particularly, be driving on what you would see as the wrong side of the road. There's all of these distractions. And now you're out of your comfort zone. And that is what the learning challenge is about. If I was getting a lift with you in the car and you were on your normal route from home to work, and I were to praise you and I were to say, oh, this is great driving, thank you very much for taking us safely, you really are a great driver. You would think I was being ironic perhaps, or patronizing, and I wouldn't mean that, but you would think, well, why is he praising me? I'm doing something that's easy. But imagine if we were driving together in India and you got us through safely without any mishap. I think you would feel deserving of a pat on the back. You would feel as if you had achieved something. You would feel as if you had learned something. You would look back at that and think, well done me, I did great there. And that's what the learning challenge is about. Instead of taking that easy route, instead of starting at stage 1 and then going in a straight line right across, it is about taking that challenging route. It's about wobble. It's about getting out of our comfort zone. And that is when we learn more. In fact, that's when we learn. When you do something that you can already do, you're not learning, you're doing. It's only when we get right to the very edge of what we can do, that's when we are wobbling, that's when we are learning. And that's what the learning challenge is all about. So let me give you an example. Working with some 10, 11-year-old students, and incidentally, this approach, the learning challenge, we found it works with students from the age of 3 upwards, 3 all the way through school, all the way through university, adult education, and of course in teacher training. It can work. It could also work in leadership. But let's use an example with 10 and 11-year-olds. The concept that we had chosen was tourism. I had visited the school, I'd visited this classroom, and I asked them, what are you studying at the moment? They said tourism. So I asked them, what is a tourist? And they looked at me as if I was very strange. I said, well, help me out. What is a tourist? And they said, a tourist is someone who visits another place. I said, like me, I'm visiting another place today. Does that make me a tourist? And one of them said, no, you have to be having fun. I said, I am having fun. And I overheard one of them say, he's strange, Jim, isn't he? I said, but if I'm visiting another place, does that make me a tourist? And they said, no, you have to take photographs. I said, well, I was taking photographs as I was going around the school. I loved the displays on your walls. I loved what I saw in the classrooms, and I've been taking photographs. And they said, no, you have to go on a tour to be a tourist. And I said, I've just been on a tour. Your principal has showed me around the school. And one of them, oh, you've got an answer for everything. And I said, that's not what I'm trying to do here. What I'm trying to do instead is to challenge you, to make it a bit more interesting, to take you into the pit by creating cognitive conflict. Now, when I say cognitive conflict, and I'll explain this a little bit more later on in the webinar, it's not about conflict between two people. It's about conflict in your own mind. So in this case, the students were thinking, on the one hand, you are a tourist if you take photographs, but on the other hand, they knew fine well that if you took photographs, that wouldn't make you a tourist necessarily. So my aim was to get them into the pit, to take them from a position where they thought they knew what a tourist was, to take them into the pit where they thought, oh, I'm not absolutely sure anymore. There's lots of different angles we can look at in terms of what a tourist is. So when they got into the pit, that's when I said, okay, let's pause there. I'd like you to go and do some research. Go off in groups. Go and look up online or look in books. Go and ask other people, what do you think a tourist is? And away they went. The teachers who were watching that lesson said the students were far more engaged in that group work, in that research, than they would normally be. They say the normal state of affairs is that they go online, they find an article about the topic that they're studying. The first article they come across, they read it without really challenging it, without questioning it. They hit print, they print it out, they put it in their books. Whereas by getting them into the pit first, they were questioning each other, they were challenging each other. One child read something online and another child questioned that and said, oh yes, but what about this? I overheard one group, one of the students said, a tourist is somebody who goes on tour. Look, it says it here. And another one says, yes, but we could go on a tour. We could go on a tour of our town and we wouldn't be tourists. We could go on a tour of our school and we wouldn't be tourists. My favorite example was there was one group and a girl said, I know you are a tourist if you think you're a tourist. And she sat back very satisfied with herself until her friend said, well, hang on a minute. I've just been on holiday with my baby sister and we were tourists, but she didn't think she was a tourist because she's too young. She doesn't really think about anything, I don't think. So was she a tourist or not? And the rest of the group let out an audible moan that, oh, we thought we had it, but now we don't. And this is not to prove that the kids don't know anything. It's about actually to show them that they know a lot more than the surface level knowledge. It's about unearthing those contradictions. It's about digging deeper into these concepts and ideas. So after a while of doing this group work, they then came back together as a whole class again. And that's when we were able to piece together, to construct some new ideas, some new meanings about tourism. And that is when students climb out of the pit. And I hope you were watching then as that 3 bounced up the pit, because it took me a very long time to animate this. In fact, I'm going to do it again. I'm so proud of it. Just look at the way that 3 bounces up. So they're going from a sense of confusion, they're going from a sense of we've got too many things to think about, this is really challenging, that's when they're in the pit. Then they get a sense of clarity as they construct new answers together. And in this example that I'm talking about with tourism, the students were saying, okay, so a tourist, generally they go on a tour, they are going for the purposes of leisure. Often it's to a place that they haven't been before, or a place that they're going specifically to look at and to take in. It's not their home. It's not somewhere that they are going for the purposes of business. It is a place that they're going for the purposes of looking around, finding out more, enjoying themselves, then normally on holiday, and so on. In other words, they move from a simple, single idea through into the pit with lots and lots of different ideas, and then they climbed out of the pit with a more complete, a more whole, a more, what shall we say, developed answer as they came out of the pit. The final stage then of a learning challenge session is to consider the learning journey, to think about where have we been with this, to look back over the learning. This is metacognition. This is thinking about thinking. What was our first answer? Where did we start? What challenged those notions? What helped us to go into the pit? What were some of the most provocative ideas? What were some of the most interesting ideas? And also, what helped us to come out of the pit? What helped us to gain that new sense of clarity? And then in this example, the students also then looked at, well, how can we apply this new developed understanding of tourism into different contexts? And they went off in different groups to look at such things as categories of tourism. Can you say there are different types of tourism? What are the pros and cons of tourism?